Hi everyone and welcome to Baking and Broadway. So this video I am making an apple pie. So I haven't really made an apple pie in probably 10 years. The last one and first one I made was Thanksgiving, probably 2010, 2011, sometime in my high school, and everyone loved it, but I really wasn't a fan, so I figured I would try again. And so a couple weeks ago I went apple picking with my coworker and I came home with roughly 20 pounds, probably closer to 15 pounds of just different varieties of apples and pears. So an apple pie for you today. So what I'm doing here is I made this apple pie filling about a week ago. It's been in my fridge, and so what it is about 3 pounds of Granny Smith apples, peeled and chopped, and then I boiled them down with some sugar, lemon juice, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg, and then I just reduced it down for about 10 minutes and then added cornstarch to thicken it. I probably added a little bit too much cornstarch, hence what I'm doing here is just adding a bit of boiling water, kind of reconstituting it, making sure I don't have any big lumps of corn flour in there, so it's not going to have like a weird like jello-y texture. So that's what I wanted to do, just to make sure I had a really nice and smooth mixture here. Now it's time for my pie dough. So my pie dough here is just a simple but all butter pie dough. So it is flour, butter, salt, and water. Bless you, Diana. And so I'm just gonna roll it out. And so, again, this is my second time making a pie and the first time in 10 years. And my brain was like, hey, I have a 9-inch pie dish, which means I need 9 inches of pie dough, which is not correct. And so you notice that the video cuts out very abruptly and then it comes back because I cut my pie dough too short and then I had to roll it out even thinner. So this is probably around an 1/8 of an inch thick. I mean, it was incredibly thin, which, you know, is great, but also it didn't really hold up to the pie. So I realized I needed to have at least 2 to 3 inches excess on top of my 9 inches. So I really needed about 11 to 12 inches of pie dough, not 9 inches of pie dough. So the things you'll learn. And so here I am just kind of trying to get as many inches as I could, especially since I had already trimmed it, which is I recommend don't trim it until you are like absolutely certain, because this is what happened. Because it's so thin, I used my rolling pin to help me roll it up and then place it into my pie dish. Again, this is a 9-inch non-stick pie dish. It's kind of pretty generic. I got it from like any like type of home goods store. And then you want to just kind of lift the edges and place the pie dough in. So you want to lift the edges because you don't want to tear the pie dough. You want to make sure that the pie dough is reaching all the way to the bottom, not because you're stretching it there, but because you are like getting all of the dough from the edges. If you stretch it, it will not hold its shape. So remember, pie dough is made of flour if you're making it from flour, and it has gluten. Gluten stretches and retracts, which is why some pie people suggest that you should chill your pie dough after you put it in your pie tin before you put your filling. That's going to make sure, and before you trim it as well. And that's going to make sure your gluten has time to relax again, to make sure it's not going to shrink back too far, and then you have nothing left. Or to make sure you don't have your edges that are too small, basically. So with this excess dough, I'm going to do a rough lattice and cut out some circles. So I really should have made a double batch of pie dough because you need more than just one crust to make a bottom and decoration. I now know that, so I will now fix that for later. But so what I did was I had a little bit excess, and so I am just going to roll this out, literally as thin as I could get it, and then I'm going to make a lattice and some circles. it is time to fill my pie. And so again, what I'm doing, I'm just pressing in my side. So I chill this in the fridge for about 10 minutes, just as long as it took me to roll out the rest of it. And I just want to make sure that my pie crust is firm to my side before I fill it. And so you might be looking at this and saying, why didn't you blind bake this pie dough? It's going to be soggy. Well, I psyched myself out and I was like, I'll always blind bake my pie doughs, no big deal. But then I was like, how do you blind bake like a double crust pie that has something on top of it as well? And so I just didn't think to Google it before. I Googled it after. And there's totally a way to blind bake even if you're going to attach decoration on top. Now I know. So whatever. So I rolled it super thin. I got it in my pie dish. And then I filled it with my apple pie filling. And here I'm just kind of measuring out my lattice strips. So as you see, it didn't have a lot. And so I had to be kind of strategic here. And so I tried to do the longest ones in the middle, shortest ones on the edge, and then create this really, really basic lattice for half of my pie. And then the other half, I am going to decorate with circles. So not the prettiest decoration I could have done, but I was thinking on my feet at this point because I was like, I did not have enough dough for any of this. So I just did, again, a really, really basic lattice. And then I am going to trim the edges just so that it ends about halfway around the pie. And then I will top it with my circles. Now that I'm happy with my circle placement, it's time to trim my pie and then just tuck that extra pie dough underneath. This is going to give you like a really thick kind of crust at the edge. And so for personally, I love a lot of crust with my pies. I've always been like this. I would rather eat the crust instead of the filling. So now I know, again, now as I'm learning my mistakes here, I would definitely make my pie crust thicker and I would have a lot of excess to have a really thick crust. I'm the same with crumbles, like cobblers. So I 100% like give me one peach in a bowl of just the cobbler filling, like the topping, and I am like in heaven. And so for this, I'm just trying to tuck what little I have left under itself to make it look a little more presentable. And then I'm going to go and do a really basic crimping pattern, and that is just taking 2 fingers on the outside and 1 finger on the inside and just pressing to make a basic crimp. This is the only crimp I thought I could kind of manage. Again, I don't have a lot of excess pie. So again, a lot of lessons learned here in making my first pie in 10 years, but basically all of it comes down to roll your pie crust bigger than you need. Don't trim until you are 100% positive you don't need it. And that should, I think, solve almost most, if not all of my problems. So again, just doing this really simple crimp, and then I'm trying to kind of attach the lattice as well to the crimp so that it doesn't completely like disappear in the oven. I'm happy with my crimp. It looks as good as it's ever gonna get. It's time to move on to the all-important egg wash. So the egg wash just gives your pastry dough color. And so I knew I needed to have an egg wash. This is just 1 single egg and a little bit of water. And I'm just gonna beat the heck out of it. And once you've beaten it for about 15 seconds, take a brush and start painting all of your dough. I would definitely suggest a smaller brush if you're going to do this. This is the only brush I have. I can't find my tiny one or my smaller one, and so I have to use my big one. And so you want to just brush all of your pastry to make it nice and golden. And the key here is if you miss a spot, it will show up when you bake it. And so it's important to really take your time and just go as slow as you need to make sure you're getting all of your pastry. It's also good maybe to have a pattern. So here I'm doing kind of the long strips first and then going back with those cross hatches so that way I don't forget where I left off. It's also kind of obvious because the pastry will look very dry comparatively to the other pastry, so make sure you just take a second look at your pie dough. So I'm just going to keep brushing my lattice. I'm going to brush my circles, and then I'm going to brush the outside edge. I'm going to try to be very careful with the outside edge, because the more egg wash you drip down the sides, the more your pastry will stick to the edge and burn. And so one of the signs of a pastry being done is if you can kind of turn the whole pie without, like, basically it'll release from the pan when the butter is set and the crust is set, and it's a nice slice of pie or a nice whole pie. So if the egg wash is cooking and sticking your pie to the side, it could trick you to thinking that your pie is done, or it could start to burn before the pie. You might think that your pie is burning, and really it's just the egg wash. So just be aware. You want to try to keep you want to try and keep your egg wash off the metal of the pan as much as you possibly can. I finished my pie off with some turbinado sugar. It's now into the oven for about 50 minutes. And here is this golden delicious masterpiece, I'm gonna call it. And so this is my result of an apple pie. I would say not bad for 10 years of not baking a pie. And so if you ever decide to make an apple pie based off this video, definitely let me know. You can find me here on YouTube and on my Instagram, baking_and_Broadway. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned a few tricks or learned what not to do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks!